The moons of Varelia hung like shattered glass in the sky, their pale arcs reflected across the jagged surface of the battlefield below. Once this ground had been scorched by orbital fire and covered in banners of alien empires. Now it was a graveyard. The kind of place that whispered rather than spoke. Commander Elias Wren adjusted the seal on his helmet as he stepped out of the dropship. Dust curled around his boots like fingers. "Scavenger teams, spread and sweep," he said over the comm. "Mark anything pre-collapse. We're here for relics, not scrap." He had seen battlefields before. Human ones. But this was different. The silence was heavier here. Older. The air felt like it remembered. While the rest of his crew moved in tight formation, Elias drifted off course. Something tugged at him. A feeling he couldn't name. Not danger. Not instinct. Something older than either. He found her halfway buried beneath a collapsed obelisk. She had not decayed. Her armor, though scorched and cracked, still gleamed faintly with traces of violet energy. Her limbs were posed as if she'd chosen her place of rest, arms stretched toward a blade that lay a meter beyond her reach. It wasn't human tech. The metal had a rippling surface, like it remembered water. Runes etched into the blade shimmered faintly when Elias stepped closer. For a long moment, he didn't speak. He knelt slowly, the crunch of dirt beneath him the only sound. She had died trying to reach the weapon. No, not a weapon. A relic. Without understanding why, Elias reached forward and lifted the blade. It was lighter than it looked, but its weight felt infinite. A sound echoed across the ruined field, too deep to be thunder and too distant to be machine. In the sky above, one of Varelia's moons flickered, then held steady. Far away, something was listening. Elias stared at the blade. It hummed faintly in his grip, as if recognizing him, as if it had waited. Behind him, his comm crackled. "Commander Wren, we've picked up an anomalous signal from orbit. Short-range burst, old tech. Might be Valkyrie. We didn't trigger it, did we?" Elias didn't answer right away. He was still kneeling, still holding the blade. He turned to the body and nodded once. "We did now." No one moved on the comm for several seconds. Then his second-in-command spoke again, her voice quieter. "Should we leave it, Stir?" He looked at the warrior again. She had not run. She had not begged. She had reached for her blade. "No," he said, rising to his feet with the blade in hand. She didn't. He slid the blade across his back and walked toward the ship. The wind rose around him. And in that wind, there was a whisper, not in any language he knew, but one he felt in his spine. Something had changed. And far across the stars, ancient eyes opened. The signal pulsed through subspace like a heartbeat, quiet, ancient, and unmistakable. Orbiting Varelia, aboard the Indra array, Dr. Celine Var dropped her data slate when the reading came through. She barely heard the crash as it clattered to the deck. Her attention was on the screen in front of her, where a dead language glowed in faint gold script. Valkyrie glyphs. Active transmission. Verified source. She leaned closer, barely daring to breathe. No, that's not possible. The Valkyrie were gone. Extinct for over 700 years. Their culture, their cities, their long hymns to the stars, all erased in a final war that no one understood and no one could explain. The trial codes they left behind were nothing more than legend. Until now. Origin point. She barked at the AI assistant hovering beside her desk. Signal emitted from surface coordinates. 21.08, 94 north, 102.3301 west. It replied in its smooth, detached voice. Signal type, Oath relay. Transmission confirmed. Celine's eyes widened. An Oath relay. You're sure? Designation matches archival records from Valkyrie Beacon 1. Confirmed. Signal is authentic. She sat back, stunned. An Oath relay was not just a message. It was a ritual. A call made when a warrior's vow had passed to another bearer. The kind of transmission that hadn't been sent in 7 centuries. The kind that only activated when a sacred blade was lifted. And someone, some human, had just lifted one. Her fingers moved fast across the console. She accessed the old texts, decrypting forgotten phrases, matching room sequences. The words scrolled across her screen, familiar from her years of obsessive study, but never seen lived before. The trial of remembrance has begun. A new bearer walks the path. The air in her cabin seemed to shift, like history itself had inhaled. Outside the viewport, Varelia hung low and silent. Its shattered moons now orbited more than dust. They orbited meaning. Celine tapped her comm. "Commander Isher, this is Dr. Vare. You need to reroute the primary survey teams. Something just came online on the surface, and I believe it's of Valkyrie origin." "Copy that, Doctor." "Source of the signal. I believe it's a weapon. Or a relic. Possibly both." There was a pause. "You think the Valkyrie left something behind?" "I think they left everything behind," she said. "We just never knew where to look." Far below, on the surface of Varelia, Elias stood alone beside his ship, the blade resting against his back like it belonged there. The hum in his mind hadn't stopped since he lifted it. It wasn't a voice, not really, more like the memory of one. When he closed his eyes, he could almost feel another presence standing beside him, watching, waiting. The message he'd unknowingly triggered had already leaked across a dozen star systems. In deep space crypt vaults, ancient monoliths blinked to life. In the far reaches of the arc spires, long silent defense arrays reoriented toward the human systems. Somewhere beyond the veil, dormant intelligences stirred from hibernation. And all because a man had lifted a blade. The trial had begun. The stars felt closer that night. Elias sat by the fire pit, the blade laid carefully beside him. Though there was no wind, the fire danced as if stirred by unseen breath. The rest of the team had retreated into the ship for rest, but he couldn't bring himself to sleep. Not yet. Not while that hum still whispered at the edge of thought. He turned the blade over in his hands. The runes shimmered faintly again. Not constantly, but when his fingers brushed certain edges, it was responding to him. Not just passively. With intention. He didn't know what that meant, and that bothered him more than he admitted. Behind him, boots crunched on stone. Celine approached, her coat flapping lightly despite the still air. "You're not imagining it," she said without greeting. He glanced up. The hum. She nodded, crouching beside him. "It's not just energy resonance. The blade's emitting low-frequency neural patterns, subconscious messaging, designed to reach someone mentally compatible with Valkyrie resonance coding." Elias stared. "You're saying it's thinking?" "No," she said, then paused. "Actually, yes. But not like we do. More like it remembers." They sat in silence for a moment. Above them, Varelia's broken moons hung motionless, silent sentinels to a long-dead empire. Celine ran her fingers along the handle of the blade, carefully avoiding the central runes. This kind of weapon wasn't just carried, it was bonded. Chosen. Valkyrie warriors didn't just wield blades, they made oaths with them. If you picked it up, and it accepted you. "I didn't ask to be accepted," Elias muttered. "That doesn't matter," she said. "The law it triggered. What we're seeing unfold, it's older than our species' first city. You lifted that blade in the presence of a fallen Valkyrie knight. That's not salvage protocol. That's an invitation. Or maybe a binding." He looked away, jaw clenched. "And what if I put it back?" Celine's voice was quiet. "It doesn't work like that." Just then, Elias felt it, like a flicker behind the eyes. For a breath, he wasn't looking at Celine or the fire or the barren rocks. He was standing in a cathedral of stars, walls formed of light and memory. A voice, not his, echoed softly. It spoke in no known language, and yet he understood. "She fell with honor. You rose with purpose. Her oath is yours." The moment passed. He blinked and the fire returned, crackling in the still night. Celine was watching him carefully. "You saw something, didn't you?" He gave a slow nod. "I think it knows who she was, and it wants me to finish what she started." Celine sat back, her face unreadable. "Then we need to find out what that was. Because the message you triggered didn't just alert historians." She tossed a data chip onto the ground beside him. On the tiny holofeed, warships were shown moving. Not theirs. Not allies. "The Haldren Council intercepted the signal too," she said. "And they're already on their way." Elias looked down at the blade again, the weight of it suddenly real. It had chosen him. Now the galaxy would find out what that meant. The sky above Varelia shimmered unnaturally. Not with clouds, not with weather. Something older. Something watching. Elias gripped the edge of the console inside the Wayfarer, watching a slow blink on the radar screen that wasn't supposed to be there. A ship. No transponder. No approach vector. Just waiting. Celine entered the cockpit behind him. "It's Haldren." He nodded. "How long?" 3 hours before they're in visual range. Less if they deploy dropships. She handed him a worn tablet. "That's their flagship. Verdict-class enforcer, loaded with interceptors." This wasn't a patrol. They were already close. Elias looked at the datapad, then out at the violet sky. So they were waiting for something to happen. Celine's eyes met his. "And now, they think it's you." He didn't answer. He felt it again. That flicker. That quiet shift in reality. It was happening more often. Not visions exactly, but overlays. Memories, or fragments of them. He sat down and closed his eyes. A new image crashed over him. A Valkyrie knight. Calith Sara stood at the head of a shattered battalion. The stars burned red above her. Behind her, massive constructs rose, curved and glistening like living crystal. Ahead, a shadow moved. Not an army. A singular force. Cold. Consuming. Calith turned to speak, but not to Elias. To someone behind her. Her voice trembled, not from fear, but grief. "If I fall, the blade must find another. The oath must survive me." Then came the sound, the one he'd heard before. The pulse. Not like a heartbeat, but like a summoning. Elias snapped back to the present, sweat on his brow. Celine steadied him. "You saw her again." "She knew she wouldn't survive," he said quietly. "She designed the blade to pass the mission on." Celine sat beside him. That mission, whatever it was, it got buried. No one remembers what really ended the Valkyrie, just that they vanished and took their enemies with them. "Maybe they didn't," Elias muttered. "Maybe something's still out there." A warning tone pierced the cockpit. 2 ships now on approach. Celine stood. If Haldren gets their hands on that blade, they'll reverse engineer whatever power the Valkyrie left behind. And they won't ask questions before they open fire. Elias reached for the blade. Its runes flickered in his grip, responding again, like it recognized the danger, like it remembered war. "Then we don't give them the chance." Celine gave him a grim nod. "There's an old relay station near the rim of the sector. Abandoned, but it was built to interface with Valkyrie signal chains. If we reach it, we might find out what Calith was trying to warn us about." Outside, the Haldren ships descended through Varelia's broken sky. Inside, a human and a historian prepared to defy an empire. As the Wayfarer powered up, the blade pulsed once more, this time stronger. The vision lingered in Elias's mind. Calith's last stand, the shape in the dark, the promise made before she fell. He hadn't chosen the oath, but he was bound by it now. And so was the future. The relay station hung in space like a relic from another age, half collapsed, rusting along its spine, but still intact. Its hull bore the unmistakable curvature of Valkyrie design, not built for war, but for memory. The Wayfarer docked gently, its magnetic clamps locking with a final hiss. Inside, the lights flickered weakly, powered by an ancient core that hadn't fully died. "This place shouldn't be functional," Celine whispered as they stepped through the airlock. Valkyrie relay stations were designed to fall silent after a bearer's death. "Then why is it still listening?" Elias asked, already knowing the answer. The blade pulsed lightly on his back. They moved through arched corridors lit by failing strips of gold and blue. Unlike human architecture, the station felt almost reverent. Each wall was etched with lines of writing, some still glowing with residual energy. Elias paused near one of the inscriptions. It shimmered as he neared it, the runes shifting shape until they formed words in his own language. "Stars remember. So must we." Celine scanned it, auto-translating stone. "That's rare. Valkyrie tech doesn't adapt like this unless it's recognizing authority." "Meaning me. Meaning the blade. It's not just a key. It's part of their living network." At the center of the station, they found the core chamber. A crystalline map flickered to life as Elias approached, a galactic projection, glowing with countless stars. But not all of them shone evenly. A cluster near the fringe pulsed faintly red. "That's not a danger marker," Celine said slowly. "That's a wound." "A what?" She touched a control ring. Valkyrie maps recorded more than positions. They tracked distortions in the structure of reality. Those red pulses, that's where space itself is. Sick. Elias studied the map. The red cluster surrounded a single dark zone. It wasn't marked by coordinates, only a symbol. The same one engraved into Calith's blade. "That's where she was going," Elias murmured. "That's what she never reached." Celine's breath caught. That region's been blacklisted for centuries. No warp routes, no signals. We always thought it was just unstable space. But what if it's not? What if the Valkyrie locked it down? The blade pulsed again, stronger this time. And Elias saw her. Calith stood in the chamber, ghostly and silent. Not fully there, just a memory. Her face was marked with urgency, her armor darkened with ash. "If this place breaks, the wound spreads. The oath must hold, even if we don't." Elias staggered, gripping the edge of the console. Celine steadied him. "What did you see?" "She called it a wound," he said. "Not an enemy, not a weapon, a break. And if we don't stop it..." He didn't finish. He didn't need to. The blade had shown him enough. Above them, the relay map shifted again. A pathway emerged, thin and winding, connecting Varelia to the black zone beyond. A hidden route. Calith's route. Celine stared. "You realize what this means. If we follow that trail, we're going where no one's dared to go since the Valkyrie fell." Elias nodded slowly. "Then it's time someone did." The map pulsed. The stars waited. Turkel was not dead. It should have been, classified as a lifeless post-collapse planet with no breathable atmosphere and no known value. But as the wayfarer descended through the upper haze, Elias saw forests blanketing the ruins below, vines crawling up structures that had once touched the sky. The world hadn't died. It had endured. "It's like nature swallowed the city whole," Celine said, eyes wide as their ship banked over crumbling towers and glistening canopies. "But those buildings, that's Valkyrie architecture, preserved, untouched." The ship settled near a stone-like structure half consumed by roots. They stepped out into dense silence. The air was clean, unnaturally so. Elias drew in a breath, and it felt heavy with memory. As they approached the entrance, the blade on his back pulsed again. The vines withdrew at its signal, curling back like living things obeying a silent command. "That's not normal," Celine whispered. "No," Elias agreed, "but it's listening." The inside of the structure was vast and dark, lit only by fading strands of bioluminescent light along the walls. Murals stretched from floor to ceiling, each depicting the same figure, Calith Sara, kneeling with her blade held high. In the final panel, she was gone, replaced by a starburst of light. Her last stand was here, Elias said. But no one finished what she started. At the center of the chamber stood a circular platform. Valkyrie glyphs encircled its edge. Elias stepped forward and laid the blade across the center. The ground trembled. Light flared around the room as ancient systems roared to life for the first time in centuries. Crystalline interfaces rose from the floor, displaying the same red distortion Celine had shown him in the relay station. Only now, the wound was larger and pulsing. "This isn't just a memory vault," Celine said, stunned. "It's a failsafe, a lock." She sealed something here. From the far wall, a dormant sentinel stirred, an 8-foot-tall construct forged in Valkyrie alloy. It stepped forward, its eyes glowing dimly. Elias reached for his weapon, but the sentinel didn't attack. Instead, it knelt before him. Warden recognized. It said in a voice of stone and stars, "Oath-bearer verified." The accord breathes once more. Celine's breath caught. "It sees you as part of them." Elias stepped onto the platform. Energy surged around him, and a deep voice filled the room. Not mechanical, but recorded. "Keleth's. If you are hearing this, then the accord has chosen again. I failed to seal the breach. I died before the last key was found. You must find it. You must finish what I could not." The blade rose from the platform, floating, burning with light. It split, revealing a second form inside, smaller, shaped like a star map shard. Celine picked it up. "It's a coordinate cipher, a final destination." Elias took the blade back into his hand. It felt lighter now, like it knew where to go. "Then this is just the beginning," he said. Outside, the trees bent in silence. The tomb world was no longer still. Tirkel breathed, and the path forward opened. The stars above the dead moon shifted as Elias stood alone beneath the open sky. The final coordinates from Tirkel had led them here, a nameless, lightless sector at the edge of known space, the kind of place maps refused to keep. The Wayfarer drifted silently through the void, engines at minimal power. Every system warned of instability, as if space itself resisted being measured. But at the center of it all stood a monolith, a floating spire of stone and light, untouched by time, surrounded by fragments of what had once been ships, cities, even planets. "This is where it ended," Celine whispered, staring at the wreckage from the viewing deck. "This is where the Valkyrie made their last stand." Elias said nothing. He was already moving toward the airlock. The blade on his back pulsed rhythmically, no longer just a memory, but a guide. As if it, too, had returned home. They landed on a narrow platform attached to the monolith. A structure emerged from the stone, carved in perfect symmetry, a throne without a ruler, and behind it, a gate made of dark crystal. As Elias approached, the gate shimmered and opened. Not into space, into memory. He stepped forward, and the stars vanished. He stood now in a grand hall that shimmered with soft gold light, surrounded by translucent figures cloaked in silver and violet. Valkyrie elders, suspended in time, their bodies long gone but their minds preserved within the monolith. One stepped forward, her face lined with wisdom and sadness. "You have come, as Caliph hoped, a bearer of a new kind. Flesh not of us, but will shaped by the oath." Elias bowed his head, unsure why, but certain it was the right thing. "I didn't seek this." "Few do," she said, "but the oath does not choose the willing. It chooses the worthy." The other elders nodded as the hall darkened. In the center, a great wound tore through the vision, an image of a rift in space, not born from war, but from entropy. From imbalance. We locked it. We gave everything to hold the gate. Caliph was the last sentinel. But even the strongest will fade in time. You are not our descendant, Elias Wren. But you are our legacy. A column of light enveloped him. The blade lifted from his back and hovered between his hands. "The accord must not be a memory," the elder said. It must be a choice, made again. The blade split again, not into shards this time, but into light and form, reshaping around his arm. Not a weapon now. A mantle. Armor formed over his chest and shoulders, not heavy, but forged of pure intention. The symbol of the Accord blazed at its heart. Celine, watching from the gate, barely breathed. "You've become their warden," she whispered. "The Accord lives again." Elias opened his eyes. He could feel the stars, the ancient law, the choice. "I don't want to rule," he said. "Then you are ready," the elders replied. Behind him, the monolith pulsed once, then went still. The Accord had returned, and the galaxy would feel it. The Wayfarer drifted quietly through the void, its engines now humming with the pulse of the Accord. Elias stood at the helm, feeling the weight of a decision he hadn't asked for but could no longer avoid. The armor, Calith's mantle, was light against his skin, but it thrummed with an unearthly power, reminding him with every movement that he was now a keeper of something ancient and vast. Behind him, Celine stood in silence, her face unreadable. She had seen the transformation, felt it too, and though the stars themselves seemed to bow in acknowledgement of Elias's new role, the tension in the air had not disappeared. The galaxy still teetered on the edge of 1,000 unknowns. "We can't go back, can we?" Celine asked quietly, her gaze fixed on the stars outside. "Not after this." Elias shook his head slowly. "We can't unmake what was done." There was no bitterness in his words, only acceptance. The Valkyrie Accord was not a war or a legacy of conflict. It was an oath of guardianship, of balance, of ensuring that forces beyond mortal comprehension did not unravel the fabric of the universe. It had been dormant for far too long, but now it had awakened. And with it, an entire galaxy that had long forgotten its roots. "You know they'll come for you," Celine said. "The Haldren Council, the Cartel, all of them. The relics of the old empires. They'll want the power of the Accord. They'll want you." Elias felt the weight of that truth settle in his chest, but he did not flinch. He was no longer Elias Wren, the scavenger. No longer just a man who stumbled into an ancient relic. He was something more, a beacon, a bridge between the past and future. "The galaxy's fractured," Elias said, his voice steady. "Too many factions, too many powers. The Accord isn't just a weapon. It's a promise. A promise I didn't make, but that I'll defend." The stars outside seemed to burn brighter at his words, as if the universe itself had heard the vow. "We can either fight to hold it together, or let it break apart. But one way or another, it will not be the same." Celine turned to him, her eyes meeting his with a quiet understanding. "And what about the wound? The thing you saw in the monolith? The rift?" Elias clenched his fist around the hilt of the blade, now no longer just a weapon, but a symbol, a part of him. The glowing sigil pulsed beneath his palm, answering his call. "We'll find it," he said. "And we'll stop it, whatever it is." The space ahead of them seemed to ripple, and for a brief moment, Elias thought he saw something else, something vast and incomprehensible, like a shadow at the edge of perception. A part of the rift, perhaps. Celine stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to carry all of this alone, you know." Elias glanced at her and gave a faint smile. "I don't think I can, but we'll make it through. Together." As the Wayfarer soared toward the unknown, the stars stretched before them like an infinite canvas, an untouched horizon full of possibility. The Accord had been reborn, not through a single act of power, but through a promise, and that promise was only just beginning. The galaxy would never be the same, but perhaps, just perhaps, it was ready for the change. Elias stood tall, the blade at his side, the mantle of the warden resting lightly on his shoulders, and as he looked ahead, the stars seemed to beckon, waiting for him to make the next move. For the first time in a long while, Elias felt the weight of his choice settle into something lighter. He had not asked for this path, but it was his to walk now, and he would walk it with the oath he had sworn. to protect the stars, to keep the promise, and to defend the fragile balance of the universe.